It's the 24th of February 2022. Man, this month is flying. It's flying. Hope everybody's doing good on this Thursday, which is my Friday. So I got a busy show for everybody tonight. The nuclear industry is pretty upset with Putin taking over Chernobyl. The nuclear industry don't want anybody to remember Chernobyl. And Putin's like, well, let's stick it on the front page. Hi, everybody. And we're just going to run right into it, I guess. Problems with nuclear power industry continues even after a long list of disasters. This is a story about Scotland. My goodness. France has announced that the nuclear reactors at Flamanville, which have been scheduled to begin operation in 2013, that's a long time ago. Imagine if your contractors working on your property said, well, it'll take us 9 years to fix the roof. Would be delayed for another 2 years by a newly discovered design problem. They never seem to stop coming, do they? Which is the nozzles. But they're going to have to check every one of the reactors. They were all built at the same time by the same people. It's already cost 14 billion euros. 4 times the original budget. 4 times. So when the nuclear industry says they're going to do something for a price, that's how they get in the door. And once they start doing it, you can't get rid of them. They're actually like cockroaches. They're more like cockroaches than cockroaches are like cockroaches. President Macron, this is some kind of joke when you call these people presidents and prime ministers. It really is. They don't represent the country at all. It's bizarre. Has conceded that the Flamanville 3 problems confirmed that such nuclear projects are uneconomic and unsuccessful, demonstrated by the huge depths of the French government, EDF, the state-run French power company. Well, they're not really a power company. They're barely able to keep anything working. They have more broken down than working equipment. Such nuclear plumbing disasters, corrosion, well, all the metal in nuclear is bombarded by neutrons, and it makes it brittle, and it's more susceptible to all the failings of any metal. Corrosion containment are global and well understood, and they have plagued the nuclear industry throughout its existence and never been resolved. And that's why the original charters to nuclear power plants was for 30 years. Because they had understood the brittleness problem. You're running these things at very high temperatures and extraordinary pressures of 1100 to 2200 psi. And the last thing you need any problems with the containment. The Taishan nuke project in China came to a stop in 2021 when the fuel rod coverings were found to be inadequate. Well, they failed. And they released a lot of radiation into the environment, and China just said, well, we can't have a fail. We can't have bad press. So they just covered it up. No, there is no government that cares about the people anywhere on the planet that I can find. Have implications of the reactor at Hinkley Point in Somerset, which is surrounded by farms, hemorrhaging radiation, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, surrounded by farms. How can that possibly go wrong? currently years behind schedule and 2 billion euros over budget, and it has similar designs. As for Chernobyl, a public inquiry regarding a fast reactor reprocessing plant at Durnford, which is Scotland, or Ireland, I can't even remember, Scotland, was in session, United Kingdom anyway, was in session when Chernobyl exploded. We're actually hearing evidence that the nuclear industry, and Durnford, you can't get near it for another 300 years because they just dumped it in holes in the ground. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, really, the story of Durnford. You know, if you use Durnford for an argument against building new nuclear plants, that'll be the end of the nuclear industry. Showing the inquiry that risk of serious accidents or explosions were so unlikely as to be almost impossible, which is what they said about Mayak, and they said about Santa Susana, and they said that about 3 Mile Island, and Chernobyl, and Fukushima, and all the other Sellafield, and Switzerland. All the nuclear meltdowns they hit away in China and everywhere else. Along with the equally notorious diffuserless Durnford waste pipe, that shaft had left the Caithness a disastrous legacy of highly radioactive, unretrievable, spent fuel particles on the beaches and seabeds. And one of the things hardest to forgive about all of that was that, and still is, the deliberate suppression of information in the interest of sustaining public acceptance of nuclear experiments. It's just, there was no need to do it, what they're doing. Their instant reaction is to tell you to shut up. None of your business. Despite the fact you're the one who's paid for it. They're incompetent. They won't get it away and let competent people take over. And so they'll wreck the planet just to keep the job and to pretend to their friends and families that they're human in any attributes whatsoever. No, Mr. Mugan, your case is not made. Chernobyl is only one in a long list of unacceptable lethal nuclear accidents. Not least the Windscale explosion in 1957. And the problem continues that Fukushima discharged untold quantities of radioactive waste into the Pacific. Oh, if it was only that easy. They destroyed the Pacific. I'd done 6 years of research expeditions up and down the coastline, 4 to 5 months at a time without going home, doing species counts. It's an extinction event. Nuclear industry is like, la 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 la. Our Scottish government is nevertheless clearly being harangued just now to accept some more nuclear experiments and assurances, and it would be wrong to do so. That's a pretty good argument for a change, isn't it? 45 killed in 3 months in accidents while clearing snow in Japan. When I was young, you had to go, anybody, senior citizens, you went and shoveled their pat. You woke up running, get your shit on, get out there and shovel that pat. Someone might be trying to bring them food. They might need to go somewhere. Well, they're not going to go nowhere because it's a snowstorm. Get out there and shovel that pat. And if it snowed all day, you were out there all day shoveling pats, and you weren't allowed to take a nickel. The worst thing you could do was take a nickel or a quarter from somebody. Your parents would skin you right on the spot. A glass of hot chocolate or a cup of cookies, yes. Only while you were working, of course, but I don't I'll never forget those days. It never hurt me, except for my back, my arms, my knees, my shoulders, ribs. Just kidding. Died after being buried by snow falling from the roofs of their homes. There's another 525 people injured in Tokyo in the last couple of days. Around 4,000 travelers have been stranded since Wednesday evening at the airport. And over 500, there's 525. 10 centimeters of snow. Total panic. Quebec just had 245 centimeters, 8 feet of snow. How would Tokyo hold up in 8 feet of snow? I know I can't. They'd be like, I guess I'm never leaving. I ain't going outdoors anymore. If you have that much snow. That's the end of that. Total 525 people between the ages of 1 year old and 100 years old. That kind of covers the whole spectrum. We're taking a hospital in the capital. Yeah, there's nothing that hurts more than slipping in the winter time because everything is so hard. And none of them are dressed for winter. Look at them. They're like birds learning to fly for the first time. It's going to hurt. 2011 disaster threatens to end age-old cultural practices. Yeah, nuclear. Nuclear is the only thing that can end century-old traditions. Way to go, nuclear. So many rituals, eh? And a lot of these are Buddhist. More than 10 years later, with so many communities that have not returned, local officials in Fukushima are warning that many traditional cultural events and practices, some centuries old, are on the verge of vanishing forever. 42 cities, towns, and villages in the hardest hit prefectures, Iwate, Miyagi, and Fukushima, which happens to correspond to the places where they've been growing, shipping, exporting the most rice and other food for the last decade. Dana Nasana says average snowfall is 500 inches. My God. It's probably the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. So scary. 42 local governments have hosted 276 events. The 42 local governments host 276 events recognized as intangible folk cultural assets by the state prefectures or municipalities. For more than 200 years, an event boys from a local community must spend 6 days by themselves in a cave near the beach. Is there any parents out there would take their second graders and third year junior high and let them live on beaches for 6 days by themselves, I wonder? Well, in the old days, when you hit 13, you were a man, even though you were just a boy. An event boys from a local community must spend 6 days by himself in the cave is amazing. Only in this year's event, only 2 15-year-old and 14-year-old boys were eligible to take part. And the local community decided to spend the event next year as only 1 boy is left who can participate in 2023. So 200-year-old traditions now are gone because of the stupid nuclear industry. These are just wonderful moments from our history, really, right? They ground you into your foreparents. 44 festivals, traditional events were suspended or terminated because of nuclear fallout. They were all in the nuclear wasteland of Miyagi and Fukushima Prefecture, where they're still growing food and surrounded by 1-ton bags of nuclear waste. The whole story just doesn't seem possible, does it? Lydia Village in Fukushima Prefecture is home to 14 varieties of rice planting dances. And so this is, but it didn't stop the rice planting, it just stopped the traditions, that's all. If it stopped the rice plant, they'd be like, score, man. No, nuclear industries, no. We're not going to lose a day. Nuclear accident? What nuclear accident? We're going to ship that to Canada. All of them, including the dance in the Hitso district that dates back more than 300 years, have been cancelled since the nuclear disaster, but not the rice. They got rid of the cultural, but the rice still kept growing there, and they kept shipping it worldwide, murdering people. Because the nuclear industry loves you so much. What elevation am I at? I'm at sea level almost. James Lucid. Well, I'm not. I'm living not very high, like 100 and... I'm about 120... Actually, I'm higher than that, I guess. I'm about 160 feet. I can't remember because it's on my GPS. I never looked at it. But 160 feet above sea level. And where I go looking for species are up in the mountains, up in the hills. Well, actually mountains, but we call them hills around here because we actually got mountains too. Huge mountains. There used to be 339 residences in Hitso district. Now there's 45 people, gullible people went back there. Nice people that were tricked and deceived by the nuclear industry. Now, I don't know if James Luce was talking to me or Dana Nasana, but I got two answers, hopefully. Who knows? The rice planting dance survived the catastrophic famines of 1833 and 37 and World War II. Now, nuclear threatens the survival, of course. Study examines the impact of pandemic on UK nuclear security. Impact of pandemic on the nuclear wasteland. On the nuclear guards, security guards, like La Hague in France has 500 security guards. Because, they're up to no good. A new study from King College, London. And years ago, there was this paper came out of King's College about tobacco. And it pissed me off. I actually went through a whole lot of work and made a little 3-minute video. It was about 12 hours work to do it. And what they were claiming was that, again, as they have for decades, that there was no adverse side effects from tobacco or from nicotine. But the problem with the cigarette was it got 7,500 chemicals. Try wrapping your mind around that. And something you're going to breathe in. Now, the majority of these chemicals are illegal to keep in your home. And you're not going to have 7,500 chemicals sitting around. So if you're a tobacco smoker, then you're a scumbag. So let's put 7,500 chemicals in you, cigarettes, and let me see you kick that. And so they were saying that people about nicotine, right, was very addictive. But if you're a smoker, you take nicotine supplements and give up cigarettes, you lose your mind because you still got to kick the 7,500 chemicals that they put in the cigarettes and the paper and the filter. Sadistic. You got to be some kind of, like, who the hell woke up one morning and said, I know, 7,500 chemicals. They'll never quit smoking. It identifies the series of lessons learned to maintaining nuclear security. Nuclear security. Like, this is some kind of sick joke. Nobody's going to go into a nuclear power plant and steal the fuel. It can't be done. You can't do it. It's a lethal dose. You take the fuel out of the pool, you die instantly. Boop. You just drop like a rock. You ain't going to put it in your pocket and walk away with it. You're not going to put it in a 50,000-ton container and drive out the gate either. You got to have a special truck. You got to have a big team of people. You got to shut down areas of the plant. The list goes on and on and on. It's just a fable. And that in order to get a job to be a security guard at a nuclear power plant, the qualifications are you got to have a high school degree any permit to carry a weapon, an open carry permit. That's it. And anybody goes near the plant, your job is to go out and make their life miserable. You got a new truck to drive around in with a gas car, you got a stupid uniform. Your job is to don't bother the farmers that are growing food, just anybody else that shows up. Putin spins a conspiracy theory Ukraine is on a path to nuclear weapons. Well, they used to have 5,000 left over from the USSR that they inherited. Nuclear weapons. Putin spins a conspiracy theory that Ukraine is on a path to nuclear weapons. If that's Putin, then he looks like he's Japanese, don't he? That's not Putin, obviously, but that's what... When Ukraine gave up a huge arsenal of nuclear weapons left on its territory after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev, rather than get out of the way, wrote the country off and destroyed the pensions and the patents of the country and the country. Rather than get out of the way and let somebody else fix it, the esteemed Gorbachev, who lives in a castle, famously struck a deal with Washington, London, and Moscow, trading the weapons for a guarantee of its security and borders. Not surprisingly, the Ukrainian government is wondering what happened to that guarantee. New York Times, of course. Well, it was true, right? They gave up their weapons, and a lot of that went to Mayak, which is Russia. And then Putin's like, I don't care. Fukushima happened, rules have changed forever. Ukraine gave up a huge arsenal of nuclear weapons left over by the Soviet Union and used the fuel from its blended down warheads to drive its nuclear power plants. So Ukraine is using mixed oxide fuel. That better not be true, because I'll be looking into that. I'll personally go to Ukraine, kick the shit out of everybody in the nuclear industry there. Direct attack against Russia to result in overthrow of any potential aggressor. Can you imagine attacking Russia? Because Russia's batshit crazy. No offense to people from Russia. I'm talking about the lunatic autocrats that they got there. And Putin, of course, his parents worked for Stalin directly. So, Putin is royalty, yeah? And he's part of the young Americans, young leaders of the world. Direct attack against Russia to result in the overthrow of anybody. That's not true. If China attacks Russia, America attacks Russia, and that's just going to be an overthrow. There's going to be nothing left. Russia's going to have nothing left, too. The head of the state pointed out that Russia remains one of the strongest nuclear powers on the planet. So you're threatening nuclear war. Can't have a normal conversation, eh? Way to go. Uranium-free medical isotopes are a breakthrough in nuclear medicine. There is no such thing as good nuclear medicine. You don't need x-rays, you use high-pressure lights and computer programs. You get a better image, and you can take it on the limit. We got a poll tonight. Hi, everybody. Everybody's doing good. Hope everybody's doing good tonight. Should Russia buy Chernobyl's radiated, deformed kids in Ukraine, orphanages, I ran out of room, color TVs so they're not so lonely? Someone actually said, no, don't buy the children color TVs that are... Well, they don't got no TV, you heartless nuclear industry creep, you. How can you be that cold to say no? Don't buy the abandoned children in orphanages to color TV. But that's the nuclear industry. I'm surprised there's only one person voted it down, really, because the nuclear industry is notorious for hating on children. It's like something they got to swear allegiance to. Do you swear to be a good member of the nuclear industry? Aye. Do you swear to hate children? Oh, of course. That's the nuclear industry. In order to become the nuclear industry, you got to swear to eradicate all the children on Earth. There is no medical DCA. You can buy it at Amazon.com, and you should. You should take it as a preventative. It's a mineral. It can't hurt you, blah, 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 blah. And so all of these are salted, but you'll see some that are pure. And some of these, like this one, not that one, some of these will ship to Canada, like that one, for instance, and the next one. And that's pure DCA. That's the better one. Pure DCA. And what you do with pure DCA, it's a powder. The other ones, majority of them are going to be pills. So it's really straightforward. You take a pill once or twice a day, right? But with the pure stuff, you just take, like a 1/16, 1/8 of a very small spoonful in a little tiny bit of water, and chug that down 2 or 3 times a day, because your body can only absorb so much of the mineral at a time. It's just a mineral. You eat the whole bottle, it can't hurt you. In fact, the chocolate bar is way more harmful than a whole bottle of that. And it restores your blood, and your blood destroys the ability of cancer. And what they found with DCA in the studies was that it eradicated all tumors in about 3 months, but it reduced even the biggest hard tumors, like big hard tumors pressing on your organs. It reduced them by 70% in the first 3 weeks, which meant you didn't need invasive or life-saving surgery. And after 3 months, you were cancer-free. Not $1 million worth of chemicals and radiation, but just a couple of glasses of water each day, basically, is what it felt like. Oh, I got to take my glass of water again. This is hurt. My hair is falling out because I'm drinking water. No, it's just a mineral like vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, and everything else. Everybody should have a bottle of it and take it regularly as a preventative because of Fukushima. Not only that, it allows your body now to produce oxygen nutrition properly in your blood and carry that throughout your whole body. One thing about the nuclear industry, and it's a very strange thing about the nuclear industry, because this is what we do 5 days a week, is it perpetually lies about every facet. And it particularly lies about any harm. It's bizarre. We cover this cycle, 24-hour typically cycle of news. And we cover news from right around the entire planet. And they all have the same ability to lie flat out in every single story. At the moment, the power plant in the Dutch town of Petten is shut down on account of leakages in the cooling system. Nobody really knows what's going on, of course. Developing an alternative to highly enriched uranium would also be preferable for the environment. Australia is digging a deep geological repository for its medical waste. Right? The stuff they put in humans, their excrement has to be put in a deep geological repository too, by the way. The whole story is disgusting, really. You can't cure somebody with man-made radiation. The 3% that do live longer with radiation in the hospitals is typically, which is the same number as the misdiagnosis, probably didn't even have cancer in the first place and were tricked and deceived. I know there was one where there was 10 million women had their breasts, they had breast cancer, had their breast removed, and it turned out they didn't. 10 million. Nuclear industry didn't even apologize on top of that. Nuclear fusion, how excited should we be? The same excitement we had about 50 years ago. That's the hidden joke, right? It's always 50 years away. Well, you don't need it anymore. You need it to destroy everybody's future, but that's about it. We don't need it. If we took these same people and put them for wind and solar storage, and we have many options, and they won't even admit to compressed air storage. They barely admit to pump hydro storage. And so if you've got wind and solar, if you use 6 types of renewables, you used wind and solar together along with geothermal and tidal, and along with pumped hydro and compressed air storages, problem solved. That's problem solved. No matter where you do, if you do that recipe, you are set for life. You can never have an issue again. You got all the peak power you can ever dream of. You got perpetual power from geothermal and tidal, and then you got endless storage, and you got the development of wind and solar. If you put your wind, of course, on top of the mountains where the wind blows all the time. I know that sounds stupid. You don't need fusion. And the International Energy Agency said earlier this year, last year it was 291 gigawatts of renewables came online in 12 months, which is equal to around 333 nuclear power plants. Because not all nuclear power plants are a full gigawatt, right? But I mean, that's amazing. You're not going to build 333 nuclear power plants in a single year, or 10 years, or a 20-year period. But you can do that with renewable year after year, and you're only going to be, each year technology gets easier, better, more effective. We know that fusion works. The process that powers the sun, yeah. And how big is the sun? 1 million times the size of the earth? It works because it's on a big scale. Some things are like that. They only work on big scales. And fusion is one of them. And they had a breakthrough. I was trying not to laugh yesterday. I'll try not to laugh tonight. It lasted for a fraction, 90 trillionth of a second. 90 trillionth of a second. Divide 90 trillion into a second. Does that boggle the mind or anything? Because that's what they're claiming, they got power back. Oh yeah, no, it was definitely there. Well, how long did it last? Well, why does that matter? It was there. Well, how long did it last? Well, 90 trillionth of a second. So when the laughter stops, 90 trillionth of a second is static electricity. 90 trillionth of a second is just where your system goes bloop. I said, look, it gave us power. They're saying you got power for 90 trillionth of a second. You really got to have some set of balls to say that one, man. Oh, yeah, no, we cracked it. It wasn't sustainable right now, but we proved it. What did you prove? Well, that we can hit 150 million degrees for 90 trillionth of a second. So take 90 trillion. It just boggles the mind, don't it? 90 trillion of a second. That's some fantastic stuff. There was cheers all through the fusion experiment. Everybody went home and celebrated and took their wives and husbands out for a big meal celebration, went dancing. We did it for 90 trillionth of a second. It was amazing. You should have been there. I can't believe they got the guts to actually write that. Let me put that on the big screen because it lasted a fraction, 90 trillionth of a second. These people should be arrested and put in a psychiatric unit. And they, like anybody that that's their evidence, it lasted 90 trillionth of a second, shouldn't be allowed to have kids or a driver's license or a bank account. They're mentally ill people. That's the definition of mentally ill. Nuclear energy producer Vattenfall cuts uranium purchases from Russia. The media is just despicable, eh? And that's something these days. A Swedish-based multinational firm is actually owned by the Swedish government. Why don't you just start that off? Swedish government. Vattenfall company was one of the first such uranium consumers to announce changes in the supply chain. This morning, the government issued a brief press release they only had it up on the site for 2 seconds or something, wherein they plainly stated no deliveries of nuclear fuel from Russia. Well, don't worry about it. They're at war. They're not going to be delivering any fuel for a while. To Vattenfall's nuclear power plant will take place until further notice. And of course, Sweden got pounded by Chernobyl, so they got some bad memories. They still got a bad taste in their mouth. Has halted both future orders from occurring as well as in transit deliveries. So if there's something on the way, they're gonna say no. We're snobs. Take it back. As a result of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia only hours ago, Dutch nuclear rival gains traction on supply concerns. At the end of last year, the Dutch government already revived the ideas of developing further nuclear capacity as a means to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. You can't reduce greenhouse gas emissions with the most carbon-intensive thing on the planet. And the stupid powers of court, everybody that was involved in the powers of court should be arrested, put on trial for crimes against humanity, and then sent to Fukushima. How nuclear science helps fruits and vegetables survive and thrive. Of course, this is the International Atomic Energy Agency, aka United Nations. They're the last ones you want to let near your food. These are lunatics. The UN, aka IAEA, in cooperation with the Food and Agriculture Organization, aka United Nations. So you got United Nations in cooperation with United Nations. So this is why I don't keep sharp objects around here, because I'm poking myself in the eye by now. As United Nations International Year of Fruit and Vegetables officially come to a close today, they love, one of their favorite things to do with United Nations subsidies like IAEA is to assimilate themselves into countries' borders and irradiate the food coming in or leaving the country. So they kill all the nutrition in the food, all the natural bacteria that your body thrives on. They're an insidious, incredibly evil organization. IAEA Genocidal Center has developed banana line with resistance to disease using mutation through irradiation. So they mutate seeds with man-made anthropogenic radiation. Instead of splicing it like they've been doing for thousands of years and coming up with easy solutions, they'll irradiate it, they'll get a mutant, then they can get a patent on it, and then they'll clone it. And all you can ever get is clones. No seeds, just clones. It's the same as GMO, except it's evil, or if that's even possible, actually. But it is, it's nuclear. If it's nuclear, it's going to be just a little bit more evil than anything else. Finnish government unsure about nuclear plant with Russia. Yeah, we don't know what to do. We got to wait till the Russians tell us what we're supposed to do, and then we'll tell you. Russia's invasion of Ukraine could end a joint Finnish-Russian... well, nobody else is going to be able to finish it. joint Finnish-Russian nuclear power plant project on the northwest coast of Finland. Would be Finland's sixth nuclear plant after much delayed. The one they just opened, right? I can't even pronounce it because it's Finnish. Olkiluoto 3 is connected to the national power grid later this year. Still not even up and connected to the grid yet. It's like a decade behind. As the first reactor to be started up in Europe in almost 15 years. And they got to get Russia to come and do it. Which is even stupider than it sounds, believe it or not. Chernobyl nuclear plant captured by the Russians after Putin forces entered the exclusion zone. Now there's a coup. Why would you capture Chernobyl? They would have gave it to you if you had asked them, for freak's sakes. Ukrainian President confirmed that Russia's forces were trying to seize the nuclear power plant. What's the problem? Calling it a declaration of war against the whole of Europe. That's already happened when Chernobyl melted down the first time. And of course, they pretended they got a sarcophagus to cover, but if anybody looks at the story, realizes the sarcophagus was just show and tell. There was no containment. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant, it's not a nuclear power plant anymore, it's a nuclear wasteland, has been captured by the Ruskies after fierce fighting, according to the advisor to the Ukrainian president, which is actually propaganda. There was no fierce fighting. Russia just went and took it. It is impossible to say the Chernobyl nuclear power plant is safe. It was never safe for starters, after a totally pointless attack by the Ruskies. One of the most serious threats in Europe today, come on. Russian troops have been attempting to seize the Chernobyl site. And with reports that a nuclear waste storage facility on the site is at risk of being destroyed. And soldiers invading from Belarus, which is full of orphanages from the Fukushima Chernobyl radioactive fallout, and the north entered the area around the former nuclear power plant today, where an incident in 1986 resulted in the worst nuclear disaster in history. This is absurdness. It was a 200-ton reactor. It was nasty. Wow, don't get me wrong. But each of Japan's reactors are 800 tons. They're completely gone. And Chernobyl was a brand new reactor. Fukushima reactors were 4 decades old. So 4 decades of reactor cores stored in the fuel pools at the top of the buildings are gone in each building. There's 2 fuel pools in each building. And they were using graphite in Chernobyl, whereas in Fukushima, it's pure uranium, pure plutonium. And reactor 3 was the mixed oxide fuel reactor. It was 1 billion times worse than a normal reactor. It's just the nuclear industry, Dana. Don't let it get to you. Well, how does that actually work? He implied Ukraine has died while trying to defend us. So they're claiming that people died trying to defend Chernobyl from being captured. Our defenders are giving their lives so that the tragedy of 1986 will not be repeated. What a despicable, filthy friggin' lawyer, yeah? Radiation can contaminate the air, soil, and waterways. Oh my God. Lost, let me show you something. I got just a ticket. Hang on. Chernobyl. Where you to, Cherry baby? Oh, here we go. First off, 3 million children with permanent disabilities need permanent health care because of Chernobyl. I mean, where's that radioactive fallout map to when you want it? Right there, Dana. I know. Okay, so this is a model of Chernobyl fallout. Now, they want you to believe it's only 30 kilometers that got radiated, right? Well, what's the radioactive plume? What do you think? Is that 30 kilometers yet? Excuse me. Excuse me. Drinking my ice water. I'm going to speed it up. Does that look like 30 kilometers to anybody? It's the radioactive fallout from Chernobyl. So when you go through it quickly, look at the radioactive fallout. Let's do it again. So that's Chernobyl. I'll put it on the big screen for you. I'm going to go fast through it though. And you can really appreciate how it spreads and reconcentrates everywhere. Look at it. Now the model doesn't just stop there because they stopped. It never stopped spreading and dispersing. There are 22,000 assemblies of spent nuclear fuel. Each assembly is around 1,800 pounds, which means almost 40 million pounds. And that's enough to kill everybody on the planet a couple of billion times over, by the way. Just a pound of that, if you walk past it, will kill you and everybody else for a million years that walks past it. They really blew it out of proportion, though, didn't they? Ukraine has 15 nuclear reactors, 14 according to others. Back and forth. I think it's 15. Chernobyl again, nuclear site now a war zone. Really? Does anybody really believe that story? In reality, I suppose I shouldn't disregard it. The nuclear industry is definitely crazy enough to do a nuclear war there. The plant was the site of the world's worst nuclear disaster. Accident. No, it wasn't. Obviously, it's Fukushima, for goodness sakes. But for 11 years, we've been stuck with that exact framed narrative. Spewing radioactive waste across Europe. Have you seen Chernobyl's models? There's Chernobyl model of the radioactive fallout. This is from France. This is only based on 16 days. 16 days. Sure, it looks like it covers the whole planet in 16 days to me, Timmy. And you're talking about a cloud of fine particles and atoms. And each particle and each atom is pulsing energy at the speed of light at 136,000 miles per millisecond in every direction. So you have an invisible cloud covering the entire planet, pulsing energy at the speed of light. Different emitters, gammas and alphas and neutrons and betas, and they don't mix with each other. When they pulse energy at the speed of light and they hit the other at the speed of light, they change directions, a braking effect. It creates an X-ray at the speed of light, and it destroys the ability of insects and bacteria to reproduce, for all splitting cells to reproduce. But it's the nuclear industry, so you expect them to lie, manipulate, and deceive. No matter what the paragraph you're going to read, they're going to lie and manipulate and deceive. It's the nuclear industry, that's what they do. They don't know how to tell the truth. Nuclear waste storage facility destroyed in Chernobyl, NBC, but it wasn't. Was it? You despicable, fear-mongering sacks of scum at the NBC. What a horrible thing to say that's not when it's not true. They could be. You got to be careful, because when you see stuff like that, it could mean that they have operatives on the ground and they're going to blow up the facility and blame it on Russia as a staged false flag event. Because your media is not who you think it is. If you're new to this, you don't have an actual media on this planet. You have a well-greased smear machine, a well-greased propaganda machine A nuclear waste storage facility in Chernobyl, Ukraine, was destroyed or was not destroyed. Well, it wasn't destroyed. After Russia forces... It's not like they don't know they're in a nuclear wasteland, okay? None of the soldiers are going to be happy about that. Trust me. We're going to what? You're going to invade nuclear meltdown site? So the news cycle obviously was gone snake-eyed. Russia-Ukraine war, nuclear waste storage facility reported destroyed. Nuclear waste storage facility destroyed. Chernobyl nuclear waste facility destroyed. Waste storage facility at risk of fighting breaks out. Russian forces enter Chernobyl seized nuclear plant amid firefight with Ukraine's. Russian invaders storm Chernobyl as Ukraine defenders give lives to avert another nuclear disaster. The heroes. Ukraine loses control of Chernobyl. Heavy fighting broken out near Chernobyl power plant. Russian invaders stormed Chernobyl as the Ukrainian defenders gave their lives to avert another nuclear disaster. Dozens killed as Russia launches attacks across the country. Ukraine says Russia tried to seize the nuclear meltdown. Yeah, that's a real coup, eh? We got their nuclear meltdown. Woo! Winning! That's what winning looks like, is it? Fucking lunatics. Excuse the language. It's okay to kill all kinds of people. It's not okay to swear. I get it. It's just a culture, right? It's the time we live in, Dana. Security expert, no evidence that Putin eager to initiate uses of nukes. Nuclear war likely? Let's go to our reporters on the ground in Ukraine. remember CNN in Kuwait, where they pretended they were in Kuwait, but they were in San Francisco in a studio doing a live satellite feed, and then someone hacked the feed. Hard cases. They'd cut your throat in a heartbeat just and blame it on Ukraine, blame it on Russia. As long as one of them, whoever's the bad guy, had the flavor. Right now, U.S. officials estimated fighting to kill 50,000 civilians. Very, very careful believing anything this lot tells you. 25,000 military personnel, 10,000 Russian soldiers. That's only if they only use conventional weapons. They step up their game. It's game over for the... I suppose you got to sell the newspaper some way. The best way to sell it is lie, right? Pro-nuclear climate activists. What the fuck is that? I'm sorry. I apologize. Like, you can't have pro-nuclear and climate activists in the same sentence. That's just wrong to do stuff like that. But this is the nuclear industry. That's how they actually work, right? And, of course, they're a lobbying group. The pro-activists are talking pro-nuclear activists. It's just weird. 230 experts. Now, these experts are the old sawhorses of the nuclear industry, by the way. Signed a letter. Oh, I'm sure they did. Written by an advocacy group called Protect Nuclear Now. They must have been up for sleepless days and nights to come up with that name, eh? What are we going to name our lobbying group? Gee, I don't know. Let's order pizzas. We'll have a think tank about it tonight. And 47 hours later, somebody was like, I got it! Protect Nuclear Now. Let's sign off on it and go home. Don't forget to give everybody bonuses. Not to close the state's Palisades nuclear power plant, according to a statement the group released Wednesday. Carbon-free. Every time I hear that word, I almost have a seizure now, eh? Protect Nuclear Now. Protect Nuclear. How come you're not down in Ukraine holding hands? Kumbaya, my soul, kumbaya. The full list of the signatories, the usual suspects, of course. You got James Hansen, the degenerate, despicable scum James Hansen. Oh, and it can't be a lobbying group without Schellenberg, the environmental progress. And who else we got here? Oh, goodness me. The Good Energy Collective, the fastest path to zero, Dr. Jessica Loveling. Oh, our good friend Dr. Joshua Goldstein. You can put all the nuclear waste you're going to use in a can of pop, Dana. Michael Snyder, really? With the climate coalitions? Oh, they got Rod Adams, a former commander. What the hell? Rod Adams wasn't a commander. He was a lieutenant on a nuclear sub, an engineer. But he wasn't a commander. That's hilarious. Former commander Rod Adams. Oh, and they got Xeon Light, which is a puppet of environmental progress, Michael Schellenberg. That's his little star sleeper self from the United Kingdom. Yeah, Rod Adams is a former nuclear submarine engineer officer. Probably one of the most prolific lawyers in the nuclear industry that we've ever seen. But he switched gears, eh? Guess what he's into today? Now he's a venture capitalist. Rod Adams, who worked at a nuclear power plant, he's retired, is now a venture capitalist. Rod Adams, who's making $100,000 a year in the nuclear industry, and whatever you can steal, of course, is now a venture capitalist. Who did he murder, I wonder? Pro-nuclear climate activists. I have a seizure every time I say that. No compute. Protect nuclear now. Well, it should be protect the world from nuclear now. Behind the Protect Nuclear Now, that's such a stupid name, isn't it? Initiative is another organization known as Climate Coalition, quite familiar with, by the way, which describes itself as a coalition of independent activists. This is, we're into the Twilight Zone stuff now. That does not raise funds from donors because they're a non-profit, so people just give them money, and has no paid employees. They're all in the industry, deeply involved in lobbying and the nuclear industry. They're already Climate Coalition. And the coalition members are the usual suspects. They're very powerful, aren't they? They got Rod Adams at the head of it. Look at that. How many times does he show up, him and Michael Schellenberg? It just never stops. Has no paid environment. Blah, blah, blah. Nuclear energy films to be screened at 118 Elliott Street. 118 Elliott Street, you say? Battle for Chernobyl. This is absurdness. Who knows? As far as I can tell, they haven't destroyed a nuclear dump site. The whole planet is now a nuclear dump site anyway, but nuclear site now a war zone. You picked a great spot to have a war in a nuclear wasteland. Way to go, Russia. This is just the media, lunatic media. And the nuclear industry must be literally having seizures themselves at this stage. No, you can't keep writing like that. The world is going to be terrified of nuclear in a couple of days' times, which is what I'm hoping is going to happen. Nuclear energy bill failed in Colorado, and the conversation will continue. We're not done yet, he said. This debate isn't over, nor will it end until we learn how to store our bounty of renewable energy for weeks or even months. Yeah, pumped hydro compressed air storage. together. Dipstick, that's all you need. Another answer may be pump storage. Maybe pump storage. Well, compressed air storage is brilliant, and so is geothermal, because that's continuous energy, and tidal, that's continuous energy. You can predict it 3,000 years down the road on top of that. Excuse me. Russia forces China to seize Chernobyl nuclear plant, the site of the world's, you guessed it, worst nuclear accident. So, if you say it enough times, is it true? We got a caller from Michigan. Hello, Michigan. Hello. Good. You got some more stuff, do you? Yeah, I seen that there, but I haven't even. Go ahead. Hey, I'm gonna put you on line. Hey, I'm gonna put you on line here. I didn't even see them till tonight, by the way. Yeah. I'm in the studio nonstop, right? And so I don't bring the phone in the studio only when I'm live. So, folks. I don't even take the phone with me when I'm driving anymore. Because they track you, right? Yeah. Anyway.
Am I on the air?
You're on the air right now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyways, I texted a couple of pictures, just so you can see what it looks like on the computer screen with the spectrometer.
I'll check them after for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. What those were, those spectrums were kind of a pretty unique shape compared to what I usually get. Now, what that is a necklace. They're selling these necklaces to, protect you from cell phone radiation.
Right. And they were radioactive.
Yeah, I bought one, a few years back, and then my brother-in-law got one, and then I said, well, you better let me check this thing to see if it's radioactive. I tested one that wasn't, but that one was from a guy he's a really well-known talk show host, and he's been selling these things on his show with that particular spectrum, and it hit over 1,500 on the Geiger counter.
Wow.
And then so I put it in the spectrometer, and it was 428 counts per minute of americium and another 134 of cesium, 137. But there's all kinds of other isotopes in there.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't identify. I could if I had the source, whatever gamma source I have, I can put it in the spectrometer to calibrate it to
right.
it, and then identify it. But it's clear, if it sets a Geiger counter off at over 1,500 counts a minute, you got a problem. But there is a positive ID on cesium and americium. Now, my brother-in-law's, his hit 600 on the Geiger counter, and there was 147.8 of americium and another 43.8 of cesium. But they're making these things and selling them, to protect you. But if you're wearing that on your chest all day,
oh yeah, that's insidious.
Yeah, and I also have a EMF, electromagnetic fields meter. Because sometimes I have to get near cell phone towers and stuff. And the government says the safe limit is 1,000 megahertz, but by them towers they get up over 80,000.
Holy!
So basically you're sitting, yeah, I make them shut them down when I'm by those. And I brought a company out, the cell phone company out, because I was telling them, hey, I don't want to get cooked. So they send their guys out, and they give them a meter, and the thing doesn't even register. They give their guys a crappy meter, so they think it's okay to work next to this thing.
Right. Same as SafeCast in Japan, right?
What's that?
The same as SafeCast is doing in Japan.
Yeah.
Go ahead anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, I took a couple of cell phones, and, you know, I put one of them necklaces by it to see if it would reduce the strength of the electromagnetic fields, and it didn't. They say it changes the frequency to where it's harmless, but what the heck difference does that make, you know, if you're getting blasted with nuclear waste? Because that's basically what they are, is nuclear waste on a necklace.
That's what I was going to say, because it would have to be some kind of depleted uranium, or it's just it's madness. Probably coming in from a country like Ukraine or something originally, right?
Yeah, who knows? But I did do, you know, people are buying like silver-lined clothing,
right,
to protect from like phone microwaves.
Right. Yeah.
And I
that's
put
right.
like a silver embedded scarf. That did seem to cut the signal. You know, I don't know if you're interested in having that on your show, but
yeah, no,
I find that interesting.
Right, and I use a curtain that keeps my cell phone won't work on the other side of the curtain. So when I'm sleeping, I don't have all these electrical waves pounding me.
Yeah, those do seem to.
They work, yeah. Mine works anyway. My phone doesn't work inside of it.
I know because I got the meter and I checked it. You know, I did the test, but I did manage to check a couple other things. One of the things I found is that, you know, because I log all these tests,
right,
and sometimes I'll do like unshielded backgrounds, like when I'm testing samples, I have it in 2 lead shields to filter out the ambient.
Right. Yeah.
But then for some tests,
like 100 pounds of lead or something, right?
You know, yeah. No, it's just, you know, roughly 1/4 inch thick, and it cuts it quite a bit.
Okay.
From the ambient air, but I could put my calibration source right outside both of these shields, and the sensor will still pick the cesium up through it.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It goes right through the 2 lead shields. The calibration source is about like 16,000 counts a minute on my Geiger counter. Or it's actually a survey meter because it picks up different emitters. Wow.
So scary.
Back in June of last year, there was like 11 counts per minute of americium and 18.6 counts of cesium. And then the one I did the other day without the shields, the americium, it went from 11 to 139. That's inside my house.
Wow.
Yeah, the cesium was 18.2. But, you know, why that is, I don't know. A couple other things I checked here. I did pizza rolls. You know, like I said, I don't want to change or name the brand. But it was between the 2 isotopes. It was 383 counts per minute per liter of pizza rolls. I did find some in pomegranate juice, pineapple juice. You know, 116 of americium. Wow. 99.9 of cesium-137, 216 point blah, 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 between the 2 of them.
Any idea where that stuff is coming from? The food? Where they're shipping it from?
The pineapple juice? That's a good question. I'm guessing, where do they go? Pineapples, Hawaii or something? They could come up. Oh, Philippines. Yeah.
Yeah, because Fukushima, Japan is shipping food to a lot of the Asian countries. And then they're repackaging and shipping at other places as their label, right?
Yeah. I went to a Japanese store. I was going to make a trip and get some more of it. But I was finding some positive stuff in Japan. You know, different amounts in the sake, because I bought like 3 or 4 at least different
yeah, because there's a lot of different brands.
Yeah.
Like 600 brands or something.
Yeah, I got it back in my notebook somewhere. But
no, it's interesting, really.
I did find less in the milk this time around. Yeah, I didn't find any americium, but I did find like 116 counts.
You tested.
Oh no, wait, I found it. Yeah, I found the americium, but not the cesium.
You used to test seaweed too. Seaweed food, like snacks and that.
Say that again.
So you used to test seaweed from supermarkets, didn't you? We used to talk about that, I think.
No, I didn't get to the seaweed. I never got any of that.
James was asking you to try to look into it. Go ahead. It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. I've never gotten to seaweed.
Because you can buy the seaweed snacks in the supermarket, right?
I haven't seen it or haven't noticed it.
Yeah, you'll see it. They all sell it, right? I tell you another one I like to see try was chips, like potato chips with sea salt. We're starting to see that show up in all the supermarkets regularly now.
I have tried potato chips. I'd have to look back through the notebooks. I got like books inches thick of like every test I do. I log.
Right? Yeah. No.
It's in my books.
Yeah, I know, because you called in a few days ago with several thousand counts per minute of numbers.
In the rain.
Right.
Yeah.
Per liter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, per liter. That's the way I do it. Counts per minute per liter. It was 5,199.9 between the two.
Yes,
and
right.
Another one was 2,233.3 something.
That was americium and cesium you were looking for, right?
Yep, americium and cesium-137.
So, like, we bioaccumulate and constellate animals and insects and mammals and birds.
You know what? I'm a deer hunter, and I caught like a deer on my trail cam, and it looked pretty rough. I bagged one the year before last, and it looked pretty healthy, except the guts didn't stink. Usually if you poke the stomach or something,
yeah,
I mean, it stinks to high heaven, but the arrow went, in one end and straight out the other, out the back leg, and I had to throw the back leg out. But one of the things I noticed was like, wow, this thing ripped up all the guts and it don't stink. Is that because the flora is all dead in their food?
Yeah, the bacteria.
Like, yeah.
It doesn't break down. It doesn't break down the same way. See. You got any opinions on Russia and Chernobyl?
Well, from what I understand, I'm not the expert on these things.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I know people there, and yeah. So anyways,
Right. Yeah. Right. I remember that. Yeah.
What I'm thinking is they don't want Ukraine to be a NATO member, because
Right.
then that means they have NATO missiles right on their border. I mean, people look at Putin as like this bad guy. I'm sure he is. Yeah, he is.
His parents both worked for Stalin, so yeah, he grew up at it.
Yeah. No matter who you are, you don't want missiles on your border. It'd be like Russia joining up with Mexico or Canada, and that means Russia's missiles are like, right across the river from me.
Yeah, it's the boogeyman. That's right. Yeah, this is normal boogeyman stuff. You need each one. Russia needs America for a boogeyman, and America needs Russia for a boogeyman to justify the enormous spending, right? The enormous looting of the taxpayers.
Yeah. But I think the thing there is that there may be a legitimate concern. I've been to Ukraine,
right.
But it's a bad idea putting, if they join NATO, then that means that they have NATO missiles, right there. There's no buffer zone for them. So
that's the story. Is that that's the only buffer zone that they're worried about. Everything else they got covered, and this is just. It's a distraction. That's what I see it as, right?
I would think so. Yeah. Are they doing some saber rattling? Well, some people are getting killed and hurt, but and whose fault is that? But there were treaties years ago that Ukraine would not be part of NATO, and Ukraine, gave up their nuclear weapons.
Right, 5,000 of them, yeah.
For some protection deal. And they've also, like with Crimea, they kept a deal where they could keep their military base, naval base. But I think it's a bad idea changing the deals where you got NATO. They're not good people. They're not like these big, wonderful conglomeration of like wonderful, righteous people. I don't think. So, I think some people are making some bad decisions, like they always do.
Okay, my friend.
Right,
anything else you want to throw out there?
No, I'll be in touch. When I run up some tests.
It's great stuff. I love hearing it. I love hearing it. I'm sure everybody else does too. It's all good.
Yeah, it is because they're hearing from somebody that actually runs the instruments.
Well, you've been doing this for a lot of years.
Over my shoulder.
You've been calling in for quite a few years, so you got a very long history anyway, right? Yeah, you got a long history. Yeah. And you've had some terrifying numbers. And you've sent me a lot of the pictures and documentation over the years on top of that, right? Okay, my friend, I'm going to finish up.
God bless.
Okay, but God bless you. Have a nice night. Bye-bye. Yeah, and so that's crazy numbers. Recent rainwater samples last week were over 5,000 counts per minute of gamma, of cesium and americium. So if you start checking for all the other isotopes, you're going to be huge numbers. Yeah, it's just the craziest. And so those necklaces, if you got them, and you know somebody in the nuclear industry that you think is stupid enough to wear them, give it to them. I shouldn't say that, I suppose. That's what they would say, right? I just despise the nuclear industry so much. It's just ridiculous that they exist. The document outlines plans of what would do in emergency, including radiation disaster. Well, you can't have a nuclear bomb without a radiation disaster. A declaration of war on the whole of Europe as Russia strikes near Chernobyl causes radioactive nuclear dust to spread to the European Union. Now, EU, Chernobyl changed the sex ratio of all species and humans in the entire EU when Chernobyl happened. which meant there was more males than females and less births on top of that. And of course, more males than females, you're going to have less births on top of that. But you can't do that to all the humans without doing it to all the insects and birds and animals and mammals too, which is what Chernobyl actually done, see? And so in one sense, because I know this is posturing, they're not going to do something like that. Russia's not stupid. Does anybody really think Russia doesn't know where the nuclear waste storage? And so Ukraine is putting out the narrative to try to get some moral support worldwide. But it's a terrible thing on both sides, right? Why drag nuclear wasteland into a public relations stunt in the first place? Because that's what this is a public relations stunt. Until they actually start doing something different. Chernobyl was the scene of the world's worst nuclear disaster in history. No, it wasn't. Fukushima was the world's worst nuclear disaster. And Chernobyl was a 200-ton reactor. It was a brand new reactor. Never had fuel pools at the top of the building with decades of reactor cores. Fukushima are 800 tons each with 4 reactors. So 3,200 tons versus Chernobyl 200 tons. But at the top of each building were 2 fuel pools at the top of 4 reactor buildings. 2 pools, because you don't have a repository anywhere on the planet. The pools are stuffed with fuel. Now the pools are meant to only have a little bit of fuel into it, and they fill the pool up with a bore-rated water to stop the chain reaction. But as you start stuffing the pool with decades of reactor cores, the boron doesn't work the same anymore. So it's still splitting the atom into the environment 24 hours a day, worldwide, hemorrhaging from 1,000 similar fuel pools. Nuclear medicine gives some patients hopes. That's a really interesting way to frame this, by the way. Gives some people hope. No, it gives nobody hope who knows the difference. Nuclear medicine, there is no nuclear medicine. They've been trying for over 150 years. They used to have uranium suppositories and radium suppositories. Try wrapping your mind around that one. They used to use uranium lipstick and uranium makeup for the children, and they would end up viciously dying from it. They used all kinds of radiation for jugs where you pour water in. You would drink the water all day long, and eventually your lower jaw would just break off and your teeth would fall out, of course, and you would die from it. There's just this long, kooky, quack doctor type with nuclear. Its entire legacy, and for years and for decades, they've been trying to convince, and not really, they know that it doesn't cure people because the statistics clearly show that. But in order to get the radiation in the hospital, you got to sign a piece of paper saying that if you die, you can't sue the hospital or the doctor. And the reason is because 97% of the people dies quicker with it than they would without it, according to the studies. Nuclear medicine offers hope. Nuclear medicine offers deception and deceit and dishonesty. The DCA, I'll bring it up again for you, cured all the cancers that it was used on 100% of the time with no adverse side effects. And you don't need a prescription. You can buy it on Amazon.com. 100% effective. Versus 90%, 97% guaranteed to kill you, shorten your life, and destroy the quality of your life immediately. Ooh. The radioactivity goes right to the tumor, delivers the radiation to the tumor. This is ludicrous talking, by the way. They've been saying this for 65 years or something. It's the same sentence. Is Japan likely to acquire nuclear power submarines? They haven't got enough money to give to victims. They're going to go buy idiotic, moron nuclear power submarines. What's Japan going to do with a nuclear submarine? My God, boy. Nuclear meltdown. Biden's radioactive pick for a U.S. nuclear team. Well, Biden picked a gay person for the nuclear team, and the media is calling them radioactive and everything else because of their lifestyle. If they're qualified, they're qualified. It's none of our business or my business or anybody else's business as far as I know. Researchers developed 3D printer capable of manufacturing large parts with powder bed fusion technology. Fusion. They love using the words. I gotta get me one of these coats for doing the shows in, and a pair of glasses like him. Cut my hair short like that. And just look at the camera. So instead of talking and doing those, I'll just look at the camera for a whole hour. That makes me look like an expert. Uses either laser, thermal energy, electron beams to melt and fuse material powder together. Well, the printers have been around for quite a few years now. They're amazing little things. Even for trinkets, they're just brilliant. But they shouldn't use them for nuclear, for goodness sakes. Barksdale implements upgrades to nuclear enterprise. It shows a picture of a world. Oh, Air Force Global Strike Command. The only thing the military is good at is rape and murder. And destroying the future of the country they're supposed to protect. Uranium is lagging other energy prices. Well, this was a rather revealing article, which really surprised me. I was like, oh, God, not more of this crap. Uranium, which promised much last year with an 88% rise from 27 US a pound to $51. Because of Sprout and Yellowcake in Canada buying up the physical stock, right? Artificially inflated the stocks and then convinced investors to buy stocks so they can cash out. Before easing back to US $44 a pound. And sitting at that price while every other form of energy surges higher, including coal and oil. Coal was up 30% last year, which is insane, to $159 a ton. It kept rising this year to $236 a ton. That's insane. Burdened by a trio of nuclear power plants accidents. My God, boy. We started with 3 Mile Island, was the end of the Renaissance, nuclear renaissance, United States. Chernobyl was the end of the nuclear renaissance in that part of the country. And Fukushima was the end of the nuclear renaissance worldwide. It was those events which almost killed the case for uranium as a provider of reliable, base load, low emission electricity. Whoever wrote that sentence should be arrested. And an ideal complement to the intermittent flows of power from wind. Intermittent. It's really interesting how they'd done that. They thought, whoever wrote that thought about it. The intermittent flows of power from wind, solar, and even hydroelectricity relies on regular rainfall to operate effectively. So, stab renewables as many times as you can. You got to give them a pat on the back for being that evil. Last year, price recovery was largely, well, if you have compressed air storage, pumped hydro storage, marry that up with geothermal and tidal, so you got to have six in your portfolio to make it work perfect forever. So it starts off with wind and solar, backed up by geothermal and tidal, which is consistent 24-hour supplies, and back that up with heavy storage like compressed air storage, where you dig mine shafts and compress air down there with excess energy, and pumped hydro, where you use excess energy to pump water up a hill. Problem solved. That's the end of the problem. That's the solution. There's no flaws in that concoction, right? Funds such as Sprout Physical Uranium Trust, which was brand new, and they had $2.5 billion worth of uranium in the last 12 months. And Yellowcake have done little more than marshal investment funds to buy uranium in one stockpile and shift it to another. So it's like having credit cards where you run up a debt, then you take your other credit card, pay off that debt, you take another credit card, pay off that debt. 30 days later, you take another credit card, pay off that debt, and eventually you go through the whole cycle again. To buy uranium in one stockpile, shift it to another, or simply rebadge it in the same secure warehouse, not even relocated. So you don't waste any money at all. What a scam, eh? That's a scam. That's a 100% scam. And what comes next, that should deliver a sustainable and substantial rally in the uranium price, but only if the owners of the mothball mines maintain their discipline. It's an interesting way to frame it. And don't reopen too quickly, and the funds are also prepared to be patient and not sell too soon. So they bought all that uranium, but they can't use it or sell it because you'll screw up the stock market. It's a 100% Ponzi scam. In effect, the mines and fund managers are waiting for uranium users, largely means power plant operators to re-enter the market. France got 12 shut down, which has been consumed in their reactors or converted into fuse pellets for newly built power stations that are always a decade behind and 4 times overpriced. The same people who condemned uranium as environmentally unacceptable source of electricity are now leading the uranium cheer squad. That's not true. That was sleeper cells the nuclear industry implanted, like xenon light, for instance, with environmental progress, have belatedly recognized that the metal doesn't add to the carbon pollution, the chief climate change culprit. No, the chief climate change culprit is nuclear. This is a radioactive plume based on 16 days. 16 days. And it covers the whole planet in a visible cloud that pulses energy every second at the speed of light for millions of years. Oil, gas, and coal don't have those attributes. Right? You know I'm right. One thing we know about the nuclear industry is they're lunatics. And the only reason we say this is because their entire legacy is predicated upon deception, misrepresentation, aka bald-faced lies. Positive is in their views of uranium about finance houses dodge the critical question of timing, only saying the recovery will continue, just don't ask exactly when. Supply side discipline as potential mine developers go slow. Aging mines or closed mines. Continued buying by investment funds. Mine supply sites at a 12-year low on top of that. And Canaccord reckons a uranium price of a bit above $40 a pound is not sufficient to incentivize mine restarts, investments in new mine supplies. You need $60 a pound to make a profit on that side of the table. But the whole problem is the nuclear industry is dying and they refuse to acknowledge it. We believe the cycle still has a long way to go. Well, that's a fable. The Sprout Physical Uranium Trust is sitting on a cash pile of $2.4 billion. My, oh my, oh my. Where did all the money just come from them? They were trying to raise money last year to buy uranium stocks. Now they got the uranium that they wanted, plus much more, and they got $2.4 billion cash sitting there. That's the uranium industry. And so what they're going to do is they're going to buy up uranium stocks for cheap, artificially inflate the stocks. Then they're going to get investors to buy into it through the clearinghouses, stock clearinghouses. And then they're going to sell their stock, and then it's going to crash 2 weeks later again. Like it's been doing for 10 years, 11 years almost. It's disgusting. It's despicable. And Global Mail in British Columbia, Canada is one of the worst offenders out there. And Sprout is looking for a New York Stock Exchange listing later this year. So they're going to carry the Ponzi scheme to its final end. And they expect uranium to move back towards $85 a pound. In your friggin' dreams. Despite the fact that all other metals are skyrocketing since coronavirus scamdemic has come along. Where's Chernobyl in Ukraine and what happened there? So the framing of that headline was to show up in search engines for people that are trying to figure it out today, right? NBC's Richard Engel tweeted this afternoon, advisor to the Ukraine minister says Russia forces entered Chernobyl and that fighting there destroyed a nuclear waste storage facility, which is not true, by the way. But a clarification was added due to mistranslation. NBC says clarifying advisor says heavy fighting may disturb the nuclear waste. Well, anybody really think that was an accident? One of the worst nuclear disasters in history. No. Again, right? It's either one or the other. The world's worst nuclear disaster or one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. Never acknowledging Fukushima is the player. After the disaster, 1,000 square mile exclusion zone was established around Chernobyl. It was 3,800 square miles. Hey, don't bother telling the truth. That would prove me wrong that the nuclear industry actually was capable. As Britain, Japan is in talks because Taiwan just sucker punched the whole country, removed all restrictions on food from 5 prefectures, including Fukushima, and Chiba right by Tokyo. Now Japan wants Britain to do the same thing. I can't remember. Uranium at one point had reached very high numbers. So how's the poll doing tonight? I don't know. Let's check it out. You got 41 votes. You got 2 people thinks that Russia shouldn't buy the victims of Chernobyl fallout a TV so they're not so lonely anymore. That's the nuclear industry for you. We're going to end that poll. Poll ending sa. Ira B donated $100 yesterday. Ira, thank you. That's just amazing. I'm just going to relax now the weekend, and I got an absurd amount of work to get through. Today was an insane day for me. I noticed that I'm happy when I'm so busy that the day disappears and I don't even know it's time to do the show. Iceland is hanging up their harpoons for good. No more whaling permits. And then the crazies are claiming the whales dying off the Irish coast due to storms in Russia. But just to suggest, even for a second, that storms are the reason the whales are dying is the definition of stupid. That's actually stupid. As soon as you go, like, say if the storm surge is 10 feet high, you get 10 feet below the surface is flat, calm, perfect. Because that's how it actually works, right? I was a commercial diver with 14,000 hours on the ocean floor. That's almost 2 years, 24 hours a day on the ocean floor when you add it all up. Continuous. I know a thing or two about the ocean. I also grew up on the ocean in a community that still has no automobiles. And I am from the way of that world. And somehow or another, I'm now from the nuclear side, only because I see it destroying our entire planet. And that's being very, very polite. It's wrecking our planet. That's what nuclear is doing. And the nuclear industry, the IAEA is the United Nations. These are absolutely devils. These are modern day demons. They're the very definition of evil, what they do and what they espouse. I'm burnt out. I'm glad it's Friday for Dana, which is Thursday for everybody else. Because I start my shows and presentations on Sunday. And we've been just can't afford to do anything. And we got a bit of a break this week. And it's taken an enormous amount of pressure off my shoulders to get all the basics covered. And so, probably going to sleep most of the weekend. I'll get up and work and then I'll go back to bed and sleep for a few hours. Hopefully I can shake off whatever's... because we are at an incredible pace, what we cover here. We cover a 24-hour news cycle, and we don't miss much here. Yeah, well, that's not true. I can show you the evidence. I do presentations on Chernobyl and their anniversaries on top of that each year, Trent. Chernobyl's not low rads at all. The radiation is not going to go down for a couple of 100,000 years. Yeah, I think you're a terrible person, Trent. I come in to say goodnight to everybody. We missed doing it last night. I was so burnt out. I was exhausted. Richard Ketcha, Chandra Churchill, Dana Nasana, Peaceware. Good night, everybody. Just starting. Kevin Blanche was here tonight. Thank you, Kevin. I hope you're doing well. Kevin's one of the most well-known activists on this planet. And loved activists on this planet. Ella, Conrad, Colette S. Hi, Colette. Yes. Hope everybody has a good night and a good weekend. The weather is just insane here. Chelsea, MC. The weather is going from just 15 above to minus 19 or something. Wind chills right now. Centrifugal force, which is John in Ontario. Hi, John. Yeah, kind of overdone it today. I feel a bit weak tonight. James Megan. And I'm just coming down to the comment sections from the top. And quick shout out to everybody that I can see there. James Lucet. Test the seaweed snacks. Yeah, I like that idea actually a lot. And it's easy to do. I think all supermarkets sell seaweed snack. And so hopefully our friend does that. I think that'd be fantastic, eh? Yeah, if you got those EMF necklaces, don't wear them things. They're crazy. thumbs down through the comments. I can't do it too fast because I'll start missing people. Wait now, I'm already missing people because I'm not wearing my shades. Gotta wear your shades, Dana. Yeah, it was a good night. Good show tonight. We got through it all. It's been a lot of, we covered a lot of news this week. My goodness. It'll be interesting to see what's going to happen between Russia and Ukraine over the next couple of days. So I might show up again for a short video if we got some updates. Which is Gara Wood was doing the research with the spectrometer. And they're not the cheap spectrometers, they're the very expensive ones. And Colette says she got her t-shirt. That's pretty awesome, and she likes it. That's good news. That's the first feedback we got on our merchandise. There's links below at the bottom of the description to the merchandise. Save the whales, close all nuclear power plant t-shirts, and all kinds of other slogans. Okay. Catch up. Yeah, I hope he checks the sea salt. Yeah, so Trent, look, radiation, according to the government itself, is 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. It's 1 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And, you know, arsenic in the mines don't cover the whole planet in invisible plumes, right? So you're not being honest, and you're not being reasonable. If you're not going to be honest and you're not going to be reasonable, then have a nice life somewhere else. Peacewear says likes the leggings. You got leggings. That'll be cool. Because they're for sale on my site too, right? It's awesome news. Okay, everybody. Yeah, so that's some good news for me that people got some of the merchandise and that they're okay with it. Thank goodness. Because you don't know, right? For sure, until people get it and you get their feedback. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. See everybody hopefully Sunday night, but it could be earlier depending on what happens with Russia. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And we'll see everybody soon. I'll probably be okay once I get... I'll sleep in tomorrow and get a nap tomorrow afternoon. I'll come around. I always do, right? This is not work for me. This is essential. This is the same as breathing air or blood. It's got to get done. And we are here to do it right. We are here to go to war for you and the 8 million species. And we will not lose. We are not allowed to fail, and therefore we will not. Hugs for everybody. God bless. Take care, folks.